Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Earn a GuideStar Seal of Transparency using your latest grant proposals. For those of you who are returning grant space webinar participants, a warm welcome back. And to those of you who are here for the first time, I'm so glad to have you joining us today. My name is Madeline Kardos. I'm the Marketing and Communications Associate for Candid, and I am speaking to you from Seattle, Washington. Today, I am joined by my fantastic colleagues, Erin DeSandro, who's our development manager for Candid, and she is based out of Washington, D.C., and Nico, who's our senior director of nonprofit programs for Candid, hailing from Oakland, California. So today, you have both coasts being represented. We'll be supporting today's webinar by managing polls, as well as collecting questions you asked along the way and posing them during our Q&A. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, we've got some rather big news for you. So we want to share that Foundation Center joined forces with GuideStar to form a new single organization called Candid. And you're all in for a treat today, because today is the first time that we're doing this type of webinar, so a GuideStar nonprofit profile training session through a grant space platform. So we're really excited. It's new for us too, and we're excited to dive in. So a fun tidbit for you here. Foundation Center and GuideStar joined forces back in February, and together we have over 88 years of experience in the nonprofit sector. And why Candid? So every year, millions of nonprofits spend trillions of dollars around the world. Candid finds out where that money comes from, where it goes, and why it matters. We believe that an effective social sector is critical for a thriving society. And we believe in the importance of solutions for the sector, by the sector. With Candid, nonprofits, foundations, donors, and the public can all be on the same page. With Candid, you can find funding with Foundation Directory online and search 140,000 funders and over 12 million grants. And you can increase your visibility with the funder community by updating your nonprofit profile on GuideStar. That's what we're doing today. You can also continue to strengthen your nonprofit by participating in more grant-based trainings to move your fundraising skills to the next level. To learn more about our capacity building training programs, you can visit grantspace.org. We offer courses across the country and at a location near you. Now, to learn more about Candid, you can visit candid.org or follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. I'd also like to go over a few items today so you know how to take part in today's event. So we've taken a screenshot of an example of the attendee interface. You should see something similar on your screen. By default, you're listening in using your computer's audio. If you would prefer to join over the phone, just select the phone call to view the dial-in information. Now, beneath that, you're going to see our handout section of the interface. This is where you can download a PDF of today's presentation. You're also going to find some really handy resources. So a PDF containing all of the information fields required to earn a GuideStar Seal of Transparency, a template of the nonprofit profile that you can use to collaborate with all of your colleagues, as well as a special worksheet on the Gold Seal of Transparency. Lastly, and looking at the very bottom of your interface here, if you have questions during the webinar, you can type them into the control panel at any time. I will be collecting these, and we're going to address them during the Q&A session at the end of today's presentation. Now, we will be sending out a follow-up email tomorrow, which will link to a recording of this webinar and to its associated handout. So let me repeat that. Yes, we are recording today's event, and we will be sending you both the slides, the handouts, and the recording tomorrow. Now, I'd like to introduce my fantastic colleagues on today's call. So first up, we have Erin DeSandro, who is our development manager for Candid.
Hello, and thanks for joining us today. I'm Erin DeSandro, and my role is to raise money in support of the profiles on GuideStar.org and maintain our relationships within the funding community. And I'm here today to offer some insights on trends in grant making and how those trends relate to the nonprofit profile.
Thank you, Erin. And then up next, we have Nico, who's our Senior Director of Nonprofit Programs at Candid.
Thanks, Madeline. I hope I am also serene. But I am here today to speak with you about why the nonprofit profile matters and why it's worth your time.
Thank you, Eva. May we all be serene. So here's our agenda for today, and we're going to have a special focus on how to use a grant application to earn a GuideStar seal of transparency. So like Erin said, she's going to kick us off by sharing her experience as Candid's development manager and explaining the type of information that funders are looking for, especially when you're applying for grants. Eva is going to take us through an overview of our GuideStar nonprofit profiles and how they power the sector as a whole. And I will be leading you in a live demo on how to claim your profile and earn a seal of transparency. Lastly, we're going to save some time at the end to answer all of your questions. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Erin.
Great, thanks, Madeline. Can go to the next slide. So before we dive into the profiles, I'm going to offer a few thoughts on trends we see in grant making and discuss a few things that funders are starting to ask for from their applicants more and more. Also touch on how these themes are reflected in the nonprofit profile, which my colleagues Eva and Madeline will go into more depth on. Next slide. So a little caveat here, much of this is just from my own perspective as a development manager at Candid, formerly GuideStar. I spend the majority of my day-to-day fundraising to support GuideStar.org and the profiles. As you can probably imagine, that entails grant applications, progress and final reports, and creating project grant budgets. So it's been my experience that funders are utilizing technology, specifically grants management vendors, to drive their grant making and make it more efficient. There's also a growing emphasis on diversity and collecting demographic data from nonprofit applicants. Funders are also asking nonprofits for tangible ways they are measuring their success of their programs, and there has been an overall increase in conversation around results data. Next slide, please. Thanks. So funders are using grants management systems to really cover all aspects of the grant making cycle, from collecting the very basic information like where to send the check once funded to the more complex feedback from applicants. And when funders have integrated their systems, meaning that all these functions are stored in one system, that's when both the nonprofit and the funder can really experience true efficiency. Funders also have the ability to be aggregators of data. This is especially impactful if they're funding in a specific geographic location or on a specific issue area. Next slide. Great. So I won't read this word for word just for the sake of time, but here's a great quote from the Robin Hood Foundation working to alleviate poverty in New York City. And they're using data from their nonprofit partners to see correlations and create more impact. Next slide, please. So more and more we see that funders are using the GuideStar profile in lieu of or in coordination with their grant applications or LOIs. GuideStar profiles, like funders, grants management vendors, can really provide more of a level playing field for the nonprofits seeking funding because all organizations are essentially required to respond to the same questions. And the fact that these vendors are pulling GuideStar data out of the profiles and presenting it in their own platforms makes a great case for why we encourage nonprofits to familiarize themselves with what information is on their profile. Next slide. Thanks. So as I mentioned before, funders are increasingly examining their grant making based on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we at GuideStar, like many funders, believe that diversity encourages innovation, energizes organizations, and widens perspectives. Funders, especially with missions closely aligned with DEI issues, want to ensure that the nonprofits they are funding are representative from a staff and leadership level of the populations that they serve. Next slide. Great. So here are two snapshots of grant applications that I've recently completed the past year or so. You can see that these two different funders are asking for diversity information about GuideStar in two different ways. The first one is from the Mellon Foundation, and the second one is from the Racial Equity and Philanthropy Fund. The first one is requesting essentially a narrative description of our DEI strategy and hiring practices. Versus the second one, which is actually asking for the demographic breakdowns of GuideStar staff. So here you can see that funders are very interested in this information, though they might be asking it in a variety of different ways on applications. So next slide, please. So some of you may already be aware of this, but the GuideStar nonprofit profiles are a repository for the demographic information you are already being asked for from funders, making it available to the 10 million users who access GuideStar.org every year. And in just a second, I'll show you how this is displayed on the profile, and later in the presentation, Madeline will actually show you how to navigate to this section of the profile. I should also mention that this is completely voluntary. We definitely recognize that demographic data is difficult to collect from staff and board, so we have decided to make this not part of the increasing levels of transparency seals, but we do recommend that you fill it out. We also, just because this is so difficult to collect from your staff and board, have some resources available for you if you would like to see them. These will offer suggestions on how to collect this from your staff responsibly and respectfully. Next slide, please. Thanks. So as promised, here is how it is displayed in the GuideStar nonprofit profile. I actually think that this might be GuideStar's data itself. We collect demographic data on race, gender, sexual orientation, and disability status for nonprofits. And again, this is publicly viewable for any funder or donor coming to GuideStar.org. Great, so next slide. So this is another trend we see in grant making. Funders care about results data and are starting to ask for more complex metrics to measure success. This can be challenging for the nonprofit, but it also provides benefits. For example, when funders are aggregators of this data, they can make insights about what works and what doesn't work for certain issue areas. For example, an environmental foundation funding pollution reduction can compare the successes and shortcomings of their grantee cohort. Collecting metrics can also lead to partnership building among grantee cohorts, and they can build off and learn from each other's successes. These metrics are most insightful and powerful when they are standardized. So GuideStar offers a simple way to track metrics in a standardized way through what's called the Common Results Catalog, which you'll hear more about later. So next slide, please. So this is an example of an application coming from the Bar Foundation from their Foundation Connect grant system. And I like this a lot because it clearly explains the difference between outcomes and outputs. And while many funders are asking for this information, few are going to this level of detail to explain it so clearly. To mirror what funders like the Bar Foundation are asking, we have recently made improvements to the area within the profile where metrics can be recorded. So you can essentially now designate whether a metric is a tangible product of doing something, an output, or the result of that output, which is an outcome. And again, Eva and Madeline will speak more about this later in the presentation. So next slide. So I mentioned several ways in which funders are improving philanthropy through technology, placing greater importance on results-based data, and asking the tough questions about the makeup of who they fund. But really, the act of fundraising is still pretty inefficient. Every second a nonprofit is spending on an overly complicated application is a second they aren't working towards their mission. And without data about nonprofits, funders still experience a lack of trust or perceived legitimacy about the nonprofit. And despite feedback loops and being able to receive this feedback in a strategic way through improved technology, there's still a great power imbalance between funders and applicants. Too often, without data transparency, funders are inequipped to make the best funding decisions, and due to this lack of being able to see a complete picture of a nonprofit, they aren't always funding organizations that are able to make long-standing impact in the communities that they serve. Next slide. So that brings me to the GuideStar nonprofit profiles. The profiles are a great way to mitigate this lack of transparency in the sector. And because funders are requesting or requiring a profile and or are incorporating your profile data into their own grants management system, now's the best time to familiarize yourself with your profile and make sure the info on there is correct and up to date. And with that, I will pass this over to my colleague Eva, who will share even more information about our profiles.
Thank you, Erin. This was really interesting, and thank you for that insider view of what is, what grant makers are asking about. So before we delve into my section, there was one question that came up that we should answer. And you had mentioned that it is obviously challenging to collect some of that demographic information from within the staff and board. One of our participant is asking, given that it's difficult, how do you suggest that it be gathered? And I wonder, Erin, if you could speak to a little bit of GuideStar's experience with gathering this information.
Sure. Well, we can definitely attest to the fact that it is very difficult, and we don't pretend to be the expert on this. While we collect the information, there's a ton of organizations out there, D5 in particular, that are really looking at ways that nonprofits can ask the questions respectfully and responsibly. And I'll also mention that the demographics section of our profile, which you'll see in just a second, is constantly evolving as things sort of change in the world. So the way that we frame the questions is always sort of under review. So with that, I would answer that question to say that I'm going to be supplying just through the chat or the question box with some more resources that you can look at from other organizations that are making some really interesting and significant strides in this area.
Thank you, Erin. That's great. So let's talk a little bit about the GuideStar nonprofit profile itself and why it matters. And before we dive in, I'd love to have a little bit of feedback from you all on how experienced you are with adding information to your organization's nonprofit profile on GuideStar. And I'll ask my colleague to launch a little poll. You should see it appear in front of you. And essentially, is it new? Is it that you already have some experience and you want to know what's different? Or is it that you're already a master and you just want to help us, you want us to help you optimize it? So I'll give everyone just a moment to click on one of those options, and that will help me guide some of the points that I make later on in the presentation. I promise everyone will get some value out of it, but it will help me understand where I should spend my time. So I'll give everyone just a second more, and it looks like the result is coming up, which is, for about half of you, it's new. So we want to make sure we cover some of the basics. And almost another half, you have some experience, but you want to know what's new and what to focus on beyond the basics. It sounds like a few of you are masters and are looking for a couple of tips to optimize. I think we'll spend our time mostly making sure that everyone can get there from A to Z, but we will hit a couple of those nuances and highlights that hopefully can help you do this faster and better. So with that, I would love the poll to be closed so that we can get back to the presentation. Perfect. And we will delve in. So many of you are here because you're already fundraising and you're applying for grants. And Erin has done a great job to say that a lot of the information that you're already putting in those grant applications is actually relevant for your nonprofit profile, and that funders are increasingly using that profile in that grant making process. So it's getting a little bit easier. Nevertheless, it's still painful, it's still inefficient. We still want to make sure that the time that you spend in fundraising really feeds your mission and not takes away from it. The second issue is that funders and donors, in spite of all of this information, still really struggle with finding the best charitable organizations to work with. So a possible solution, and really how GuideStar came about, create a robust data network to simplify the fundraising process and to leverage the power of the internet to make the information flow. So here's a little bit of a visual representation of that. We take in information from nonprofits, either directly through the profile program, which you're about to find out more about, or through the information that you report to the IRS that is publicly available information. We put it on a nonprofit profile online, and that's on GuideStar.org. We also, this is where many audiences find your information, by going to GuideStar directly. Now, let's talk about Walter here. Walter here just stands for about 100,000 better informed funders, nonprofits, researchers, journalists, all the people who come and look at this information and use it. The GuideStar website is not the only place that those people see that information. And so what I'm highlighting to you is that it both flows to GuideStar, but it also flows to a large number of partners, including many community foundations, grant management systems vendors, financial institutions, technology companies, and social media platforms. So when you update your profile, it's not just for GuideStar. It really is for this very connected network of many, many platforms that leverage it. Here are some specific examples about who those platforms are. So you see some, very big companies up here like Amazon and Facebook. You see a lot of social sector actors, Volunteer Match. You see donor advised funds represented, Fidelity, Schwab, Charitable, and many others. So those Walters, some of them are seeing your information on GuideStar. A vast number of them are seeing your information on those other platforms and through those partners. Let's look at a specific set of examples for how this works. So here is how your information will display on Charity Navigator. Charity Navigator and GuideStar have partnered to share information, and we are specifically showing the gold seal of transparency level information and the platinum seal of transparency level information. So that's answers to charting impact questions as well as your quantitative indicators of progress and results. And those are showing up on Charity Navigator. There's information that comes to Amazon. Each partner determines what they need for their audience and for their platform. And in Amazon's case, they're drawing on some basic profile information, your name, your location, your mission statement, and some of the program information that you will share. And then let's talk a little bit about Facebook. This changes again every year. Currently, Facebook displays your mission information, uses some of GuideStar's information to validate that your organization is a legitimate charity, and they also link to your nonprofit profile on GuideStar so that a fundraiser or a person who wants to know more can navigate to that. So what I want to emphasize to you is that the profile goes, way beyond the IRS data. I don't know about you, but I don't want to be known. I don't want my tax form to be my calling card. And I don't want Candid's tax form to be Candid's calling card. So we really work hard to make the profile try to tell a fuller story of an organization's work, and in particular to add more information about its mission, programs, where it does its work, and the people served, that really relevant information. We want to make sure that we're helping the field move from ratios to results. We explicitly do not display the overhead ratio on the profile. We have explicitly added the platinum section in order to start giving donors an alternative to focusing on those overhead ratios. Don't just look at that, look actually at what the organization is accomplishing. And obviously the best source for that information is you all, nonprofits directly. I mentioned seals of transparency, and they sound wonderful: bronze, silver, gold, platinum. I want to say a little bit about what they are. So they're essentially a way for us to recognize you for sharing information and for being transparent. And the 4 levels correspond to different information fields. Bronze is the entry level that essentially allows your organization to be found. The silver level allows you to grow trust with your stakeholders by sharing financial info. The gold level really starts to get to your goals and strategies so you can tell others about your work. And the platinum level recognizes you for sharing some of those quantitative indicators of progress and results so that you can really start showing the difference you're making. Now, transparency is a little bit of an old-fashioned word, but it matters. We know that one of the main reasons that donors are reluctant to give or to give more is because they don't necessarily trust. And so the reasons for trust are, actually understanding an organization's accomplishments, reputation, and financials. And then there are reasons that donors, lack trust, including a lack of honesty and transparency. We have also had some interesting results from an independent research study done by a researcher, Erica Harris at Villanova University, that has shown that specifically having a GuideStar seal of transparency matters for the contributions that an organization ultimately receives. Now, I want to be very truthful with you. I'm not promising that you're going to get a 53% bump in contributions next year if you earn your seal. So please don't email me asking why that's not coming your way. But what Erica has been able to do is to really analyze hundreds of thousands of organizations and to look at the relationship between their seal level and their contributions a year later. And she has found an overall statistically significant pattern that says that organizations who are transparent by earning a seal do see an increase in contributions a year later. And then finally, obviously, we do a lot of analysis on our own website to see if a seal matters. And so we're noticing things like the fact that profiles get more views if they have a seal of transparency, and audiences or stakeholders spend more time with a profile if there's better information on it. So no surprise, platinum and gold seals, people spend more time. And then we also see through the donate button functionality that we enable on the website that most of the nonprofits who have received donations do have a seal. So before we go any further, I'd love to know if there are any questions.
Hi, Eva. Yeah, so I've been monitoring our questions, and I've gotten a couple around information that shows up on our partner sites like Charity Navigator and like Facebook. So can you kind of reiterate how that information gets there, particularly how you can update your information and what exactly shows?
Great question. So let me take the easy one first, which is how you update. When you update your nonprofit profile on GuideStar, that information will automatically flow to those partners. So you don't have to do anything separate for each of those platforms. And that's part of the, hopefully, sanity saving purpose of the profile, which is how can we have a hub for this information that gets leveraged across platforms so not everyone has to go and update their address on 200 plus platforms. So that's the easy part. The part about how each partner draws on the information, very honestly, each partner determines its own set of requirements that really make sense for their platform and their audience. So in the case of Charity Navigator, you saw that they are moving to sharing particularly the gold and platinum information because they really want their donors who visit the site to not only see the rating, but to actually start to see some impact related information. In the case of Facebook and Amazon, we are obviously competing with a very different experience there, or I don't know if competing is the right word, but we are part of a very different experience there. There's a lot going on Amazon that's really focused on shopping, right? So the nonprofit information is part of the Amazon Smile program, where people can select that a small fraction of their purchase can go to a particular nonprofit. And that's enabled through that, more succinct view of a particular nonprofit, a name and a mission statement and a program. So I think that's a little bit, we were constantly working with our partners to see how they can incorporate this information. They're constantly changing their experience. I will say that a number of our donor advised fund partners actually are able to display the nonprofit profile itself just the way it looks on GuideStar within their experience for donors. So essentially a donor is able to search for a nonprofit, and when they click for more information, what they will see is your GuideStar profile. So there's really a broad range of the way that the information shows up.
Perfect. And with that, we will be moving on to the next portion of today's webinar. Thank you,
Yes,
Eva.
Madeline, I am passing the baton to you.
Thank you for the baton. Here we are. So the next portion of today's event is going to basically go into how to gain access to your profile, so how to claim your profile and earn a seal of transparency, with a special focus on how to pull information in from your grant proposal into your profile. And we're going to incorporate all this great information that both Erin and Eva have provided us. So before we go straight into the nitty-gritties, I want to take it back a notch, just for those of you who are totally new to our process. And I saw that about 50% of you said you were new, so I do want to touch base on this a moment here. So this is how you gain access to your profile, right? Oh, and I do want to make a note. I have created slides for everything I'm about to say, including during the live demo. So no need to take furious notes. I have recorded a lot of what I'm about to say. So, okay, your organization has a profile on GuideStar, but how do you gain access to it, right? It's a fairly easy process. You just want to make sure that you have your organization's employer identification number, or EIN, on hand. So here's the first step. If you don't already have an account on GuideStar, you're going to go ahead and create one by going to www.guidestar.org and clicking that top right-hand button that says Create Account. You're going to be prompted to fill out a few web forms, and then you'll be on your way. Now, a best practice when you are creating your account, we do ask that you sign up using an email address associated with your organization. So for example, I would use madeline.kardos@candid.org, not my Gmail. Now, if you already have an account with GuideStar, very easy. You're going to go to our homepage, and click Sign In, which is also located on the top right-hand side. Here we go. Then the next step is to find your organization using either your organization name, your EIN, or your headquarters. From there, we're going to make sure that you verify your email address. So you're going to get an email in your inbox confirming you are who you say you are. This is your account. Once you've clicked the link in that email, you're going to be taken to a web page that looks like this one. And you have two options here. You can either click the little tiny update button, or you can go to the very top of our web page that says Update Nonprofit Profile and give that a click. We're almost there. So then the next step after that is to click the blue Get Started Now button. That will jump you into our final step here, step number 5. Once you've done all of this, you found your organization, you've verified, you've clicked the button, a web form such as this one will appear on your screen. All you have to do is fill in the required fields, such as your website, your telephone number, and check those boxes at the bottom, and then click Submit Request. So remember, if you created an account with an email address associated with your organization, you're going to be approved pretty quickly. Now, if you don't have an email address associated with your organization, that's completely okay. It's just going to take us a little longer to approve you. So what we ask you to do is please be on the lookout at your inbox. Take a look at your inbox. You're going to receive an email from us asking for more information to verify who you are and how you're affiliated with your organization. So a couple of best practices for the end of this process here. Number one, you can add as many managers to your profile as you want. There's absolutely no limit, so you can go through this process as many times as you need. And number two, please check your junk mail. Sometimes our emails get sent there by accident, so please definitely check your spam folder and look for our emails there. All right, so once you have access to your profile, you can start editing right away. So what you're going to do is click that Update Nonprofit Profile button that you can find on the top of any of our web pages, and you'll see this screen. Once you see your organization name, you know you've done it right, you're in the right place. You're going to click the Actions button and then Edit to jump into the profile itself. Now the next screen you're going to see already opens up for you. I'm going to point out a couple of quick navigation tips so you know how to get around the profile. So what you're first going to see is your organization name and the seal level next to it. So you can see this is Candid's profile and we are at Platinum. And below that I've highlighted a progress bar. This is your progress in earning a seal of transparency. So like Eva was saying, the seals are kind of like a stepladder. So in order to earn a platinum seal, bronze, silver, and gold all need to be 100% complete. So this is a great way to see, you know, if bronze is at 60%, you've got a little bit of work to do in the bronze seal. So definitely take a look at this to see where you're at. Now, if you look below that, you're going to see kind of a lighter blue banner where it says Summary, Confirm and Publish Benefits, Rewards, and View Public Profile. So looking at Summary to start, this is the page that has already opened. So this is already your summary page. And a couple of key things that you're going to want to do on here is, first of all, if you look right below that, you're going to see your seal level. So this is another way to see where you're at. And if you click the update button, it will take you to the next section that you need to fill out. Now, if you look to the left of that, you're going to see a drop-down menu. This is another way to get through our profile. Basically, that's how you click through the different sections of the profile in order to add information. If you look to the very bottom here, you're going to see a profile status. This is going to show you the last time your profile was published. And then if you look to the right, you're going to see this little blue bubble. This is our help center. So when you're in our profile, if you run up into any issues or you have any questions, you can click this little bubble and our support team will answer your questions in live time. We also have a lot of articles written on every single section, so don't worry, you're not alone in our system. All right. Now, the other thing on the summary page that I really want to call some attention to is at the very bottom here, it's assigning profile managers. So once you yourself have access to your profile, you have the power to add as many managers as you want. So like I said, there is no limit, and a best practice that we highly encourage is to add a general email address like info@yournonprofit.org as a manager to your account. That way you don't get locked out. So let's say, Susie Q is on vacation, she's sick, you have a general account that you can use to get back into your profile. Okay, so that was the first part of how to claim your profile and get into the system. Now we're going to jump into that live demo of how to actually fill out your profile, where to grab that information from your proposal, and how to earn that 2019 Seal of Transparency. So I'm actually going to jump us right in, and if you'll pardon me a moment, let me switch tabs here. There we go. All right, so this should look very familiar because you just saw it in my slide deck here. So this is our summary page, and what I'm going to do is jump straight into the bronze seal right now. So Eva already mentioned this. The bronze seal is about basic information so that your organization can be found, right? So in terms of a grant application, this is right at the top. And I'm going to be very frank with you all. This is a really easy section to complete. It's about a dozen data elements. It takes about 15 minutes when you sit down and do it. So I'm going to go through the different categories here, but you're going to recognize all of these. You've filled this out time and time again. So names and contacts, we're looking for your primary contact information. Addresses, so your main address. Donation information, so who should we send a check to. Founding information, so on many grant applications, they want to know the year that you were founded, so you have an option to show that. Leadership and staff, so kind of first and last name about your executive director, same thing for your board members. We have a section on brand where you can include your website, your tagline, a logo if you have one. I know a lot of grant proposals ask you mostly for your website, sometimes a couple of others. Mission statement, you guys have done this many times over. We're looking for a 1 to 2 sentence version of that. So we're not looking for the full 800 characters here. We're looking for 1 to 2 sentences. And particularly programs and maps, I'm going to call out in the bronze seal. This is something Erin was speaking to. And actually, before I jump there, I do want to mention that when you're filling in this information, everything with a little red asterisk, that means it's a required field. That's required to earn a seal. Now, some of them are optional, which is totally fine. You definitely don't need to fill them out. However, if you have an AKA or a DBA, you're definitely going to want to put that. So if you're known by an acronym, for example, you definitely want to put that on your profile. So let me briefly jump to our programs and maps here, because I do want to show you the space to add a target population served. So for each program, you're going to give a program name, a very brief description. We're looking for about 3 to 4 sentences here, and this target population served. So a lot of grant proposals, they want to know what target population are you serving and what area are you serving. And so this is really fun. We do have a geographic area served map. You can select up to 5 areas here, and our areas include counties, cities, states, and on the international level, countries. All right, you can see we've listed our top 3 to 5 programs here. That is what we recommend, doing your top 3 to 5. And then we have a brief section for categorization. So like I said, bronze, basic information, it'll take you about 15 minutes. A lot of this information is already in your grant proposal. You just kind of need to copy and paste it over. Now silver. Silver is even easier, believe it or not. Silver is based on basic financial information. So we have 2 options for you here. You can either upload an audited financial statement, or you can manually fill in some basic financial information. I know with grant proposals, sometimes they ask you to upload an audit. So if you already have that, that's perfect. Or they ask you to upload a Form 990. So grab either of those documents that you have, and you can fill out this section in about 5 minutes. I've literally seen people sit down and fill this out in 5 minutes. So it's a very easy one to do. Let me briefly scroll through it here so you know what to look for. So yet again, if you have an audited financial statement, all you have to do is upload it, and you've completed the requirements for the Silver Seal of Transparency. Now, if you don't have an audited financial statement, like I said, please do not worry. You can manually enter this information. Where do you find it? Your Form 990. So go grab your most recent Form 990 and look at the bottom of page 1, top of page 2. All of these financial terms are going to look really, really familiar. And a brief note, we are looking for financial information from within the past 2 years. We want this to be fresh. So our system is going to require that you put something in from 2017 or above. So what are we looking for? We're looking for your fiscal year. We're looking for brief bits on your revenue, so contribution, gifts, and grants, and total revenue. We're looking for your expenses, program, admin, total expenses. Now, of course, if you have other expenses, you definitely want to list them and make sure that all of these total up. Make sure everything matches your Form 990. Assets and liabilities, you should have this on your Form 990. And last but not least is funding sources. Now, this is an optional section. It is not required to earn a Silver Seal. However, a lot of foundations request this information and like to see it on your profile. So this is the top 3 main sources of funding. You can either name specific funders here. So for example, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation for $500 million, woo! Or you could do types of funding. So we've done that. We've got program revenue, grants, membership. Okay, that's the Silver Seal. Like I said, it takes about 5 minutes to complete once you grab those documents or you pull them from your most recent grant proposal. Now, I really want to focus on the gold seal here. The gold seal is all about your long-term goals and strategies. And this is basically made up of 5 charting impact questions that we developed with the BBBY's Giving Alliance, Independent Sector, and GuideStar. Took us about a year and a half to come up with these, so a lot of thought went into it. And I want to make a note and say, you have done all of this before. So when you're looking at your most recent grant proposal, these questions are going to look very, very familiar. So let me scroll through here. It starts with a problem overview. So this is basically summarizing the problem you're working to address. This is an optional section. We're looking for about 1 to 2 sentences. We are totally overachievers and went way beyond that, but you do not have to do a full paragraph for this section. What I do want to focus on, though, are the 5 charting impact questions. So yet again, these are going to look extremely familiar. If you look at your most recent grant proposal, particularly if there's a section that says purpose, strategy, and accomplishments, that usually translates to these questions. So you've answered this before. It might be phrased slightly differently, but you definitely have the contents. What you're going to do is take that information from your grant proposal and essentially kind of mush it into our sections here. So for example, what is your organization aiming to accomplish? This would be your purpose, or in some cases, kind of a longer form of your mission statement. Now, what we're looking for on the profile itself is about 3 to 4 short paragraphs. And the reason why I say short is because people have the attention span of a goldfish when they're online. So they remember things at 15 seconds at a time. So you want to make sure that this content is bite-sized and glanceable. So for each paragraph, you want to separate it with a space. You might want to play around with adding numbers or bulleting, something to basically break up the text so it isn't a giant wall of information. Okay, so those are kind of some best practices on inputting the information. You know where to find it from your most recent grant proposal. Let me scroll down here. What are your strategies for making this happen? So yet again, if a grant proposal is talking about strategy, this is exactly where you want to put it. Capabilities for doing this. So what we're asking for is, in the next couple of years, what's going to keep your organization going, right? What are the special factors that keep you strong? So in a grant proposal, this might be, tell us a little bit more about your leadership, or tell us a little bit more about your board. This is where you can put those special features. So for example, if you have an amazing team, if you have really dedicated leaders, if you have stable financials, what is it that keeps you going? Indicators. So these are your top 3 to 5 metrics, and Erin was talking about this, how outcomes are very, very important to foundations, and this is where you specify your goal. So in the next 3 to 5 years, where do you want to be? So, in 5 years, we want to serve 2,000 clients, for example. And then last but not least, what have you accomplished so far, and what's next? You get to brag a little bit about yourselves here. Everyone loves to see this, so of course, foundations are going to ask for your accomplishments. You can just kind of copy and paste in here, but please don't forget about what's next, right? Because they want to know how they can help, particularly what they can fund in the future. So that is the gold seal. Like I said, it's pretty easy. If you grab your most recent grant application, it's about a 20-minute activity. You just kind of have to mush it in here. Without a grant application, it might take a little bit of soul searching on the part of your organization. Yes, this is gold. I'm now going to jump into platinum. So platinum is really great. This is your year-over-year metrics. And this is also what Erin was talking about, your outcomes, right? So we have resources for you. We're not going to leave you hanging. We have something called the GuideStar Common Results Catalog, and I have it queued up for you right now, which is a giant list of metrics that are already in our system. And a fun fact, about 70% of metrics displayed on all GuideStar profiles comes from this catalog, so it's more than likely you're going to find one that works for your organization. Now, I've gone ahead, and Erin actually gave the example of a foundation that was asking about pollution reduction, so I've gone ahead and found a metric that we can use. So number of tons of nitrogen pollution reduced. That's perfect. That's exactly what I want to report. You're going to come here. You're going to click search for metrics. You're going to use our keyword search, so you can just put in the word pollution and that will pop it up, or you can use the categories on the left. You can do service strategy or categories, either will work. Here we go. I'm going to go ahead and click this, and you're going to see it in your selections box. Now, if it's not perfect, if maybe sediment was not the right word, you can create your own custom metric. We recommend you stick to this layout, number of blank who blank. So this would be, number of, maybe it wasn't sediment, but I think one of them was nitrogen removed. Okay, so number of blank blank. I'm going to go ahead and go forward with this one as our example here. All right, so I'm going to scroll to the bottom and I add details. So to earn a platinum seal, all you need is one metric with basically data from the most recent year, so 2018. However, we recommend that you do your top 3 to 5 metrics and give each of those 3 to 5 years worth of data. That way you can show a trend and you can add a year all the way back to the year 2000. You can also add context notes to maybe explain this information. Maybe you had a great year, maybe you had an awful year. You can explain that, or a little bit more about the metric itself. Now you can relate it to a program, which I highly recommend. You can also choose a target population served, which is great, right? Foundations want to see the target populations you're serving, and you can essentially tie your outcome to one. Now, what type of metric is this? This is what Erin was talking about. You can specify, and this is actually new in our system for 2019, this is absolutely new. You can specify what type of metric this is. Is it an input, right? Is it describing a resource you use, like number of donations? Is it an output, what you do every day, so number of clients served? Is it an outcome, percentage of clients satisfied with their experience? Is it a context, for example, number of homeless on the street, or is it something else, right? Then you can define your direction of success. So over time, what trend should we be seeing? What should funders be looking for? Should your numbers increase? So for, this is usually for a positive thing, such as number of clients served. Should it decrease? So for example, number of homeless on the street, hopefully you'd want that to decrease, or should it hold steady, right? This is great for percentages. So if you serve 99% of clients in your area, you're probably going to want to hold steady. When you're ready, you're going to go ahead and click Yes Display. If you're not, you can click No, that'll kind of save it on the back burner. And display but note it's no longer tracked is basically great for older data. But you definitely want to click Yes Display to earn a platinum seal. I'm going to click No so I don't get in trouble. Now, when you're done inputting information, you're going to save all of your good work and then you're going to publish it, right? So you're going to go to confirm and publish, and this will basically take all that good work and make it public and earn you your seal, right? So here we've got our page, let it load. You're going to click these boxes here, and then these are our donation permissions. So if you want to send your information to our partner network of over 200 websites, you're going to toggle this on. And you can add a donate button, right? If you earn a bronze seal of transparency or higher, this option will be enabled and you're going to click publish now. You can do this as many times as you want. Just make sure each time you edit your information, you want to save it and publish. So edit, save, publish. That's going to be the process that you go through. Okay. Now, I did go through bronze, silver, gold, and platinum. These all have required fields. I do want to highlight one section in particular that is optional, completely voluntary. It is not required to earn a seal of transparency, but as Erin was saying, it's very important to foundations right now, and this is the demographics of your organization, right? So we're looking at your staff. So in particular, we're looking at how many total individuals does your organization have in the following categories. You've got board, full-time, part-time, and then in addition to that, senior staff. So best practices for filling out this section is make sure senior staff is included in these totals. This is kind of a call out for them on the bottom. And make sure that your totals are reflected all throughout the system. So if you put 9 board members, you want to make sure that board members list 9 all throughout your section. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take those totals and we're going to break them down by identities. We've got gender identity, race and ethnicity, sexual orientation, and disability status. So very similar sections. I do want to reiterate here that all of this is voluntary. You can, of course, use our own questions as a guide if you want to, create your own survey for your own employees. But yet again, please, comfort matters. We know representation matters, but comfort also matters. If you're not comfortable asking, you can do portions of this section until you feel most comfortable with it. There is an option for kind of checking what you do, kind of checking your diversity strategies, and then a little section to include a little bit more. So I see we're running a little bit short on time. I apologize, I can't explain a lot further into this, so I'm going to go back into our PowerPoint here. And like I said, I did create slides on everything I just said, everything. So I'm going to skip through here. Here we are, to our questions and answers so we can start answering your questions that you've been asking. So Eva, what have we seen coming in?
Oh boy, we've had a lot of great activity in the chat, in the questions section. So without further ado, let's take a few of some of those common questions. The first one is around how much it costs. Is it free to earn a seal? Is it free to participate? And I posed the question, and I'll just answer it myself, which is the seals are for free. It does not cost you any money to participate in the profile program. Frankly, we recognize that we are taking some of your time, right? So it's not really for free in the sense that you are spending time providing this information. We recognize that, but we do not charge any additional fees for doing so. So that was an easy one. I think there was a really good question around being able to share in the seal, share the fact that someone has received it, and there's kind of several flavors. Do we have access to the images? Should we, how can we share them via social media and our feeds? Madeline, that might be a great thing for you to address. What would you say?
And I can actually show you right now. Once you earn a seal, you can go ahead and go to this benefits and rewards section. And this has exactly what you need. So the GuideStar participation logo and widget, that's the image you can put on your website. And then the outreach toolkit, this is sample press release materials like social media posts and also images of the seal that you can put on print publications. So that is where you'll find it. And Eva, I'm going to hang out in the profile for a moment here in case we have profile specific questions.
Yep, perfect. So let's talk a little bit about the idea of here's a question coming in. So you had mentioned that the platinum, there's a question about the annual seal. So some folks with sharp eyes, I think, noticed that there was a year on the seal. And there are related questions about, the cadence of refreshes to this information, right? As soon as you enter it, the world may have changed, a week from now or a month from now or a year from now. So what does it mean for updating? And actually, I'd love for you, Madeline, to maybe speak to the update, and I'm happy to address the kind of annual seal cadence.
Right, so that's a really good question. Got some eagle eyes out there. So in terms of updating, we usually recommend that you come on into the profile about 1 to 2 times a year. The first time of the year is, at the beginning of the year when your Form 990 is complete. That way you can come on in and enter most recent financial information in the silver seal, and of course, year-over-year results from the previous year in the platinum seal. The second time of year is right before giving season. So that's about September and October, where people are really going to the internet to learn more about nonprofits and how to donate to them. And of course, they're going to be looking at your profile. Eva, I will let you speak to the cadence of the yearly seals themselves.
Yeah, so part of the reason for having a year on a seal is because transparency isn't real unless the information is actually relatively recent. So you saw that what we ask for is kind of the most recent complete fiscal year with respect to financials or platinum metrics, and obviously the latest information in terms of your actual programs and mission. We are not trying to take all your time. We're not trying to be Facebook in this way, right? We're trying to essentially have you update on a regular cadence, have you reflect your organization's progress and results. We do recommend that you check your profile before giving season begins. So typically the summer, I'm not suggesting you should, have your laptop on the beach and update your profile, although you can if you'd like. But what we do suggest is that you do update, before giving season, make sure that things are pretty well up to date. we see a lot of activity in that sort of October, November, December timeframe. There's activity the rest of the year as well, but there's definitely a spike for giving season. The seals come out about in the first quarter of each year, and they also allow us to update what we ask for. So if there's new information that both funders are seeking or nonprofits are seeking to contribute, we do make updates. We try not to make them overly onerous. The whole thing won't change. Your information will be saved from last year, but we do some updates because this should be a living and evolving standard. So I think that may be all the time that we have for questions, and I hope that we've been able to address a number of them, and I'll let you close us out, Madeline.
All right, and thank you, Eva. I do want to mention that we do have resources for you, and if we couldn't get to all of your questions, there are places you can go to get them answered. First is our GuideStar Help Center. We also have YouTube tutorials on everything we just talked about, and we are going to send links to the Common Results catalog. So please rest assured you will receive a follow-up email tomorrow with a link to the recording of today's event, as well as a short survey. We very much appreciate your feedback, as it will help us plan future offerings, as well as consider how we can craft the best webinar experience possible. So on behalf of our whole team here at Candid, I want to thank you for joining us today. I want to thank our presenters for their time. And if you like this webinar, we hope that you join us again soon. Have a great rest of your day.